What is going on, everybody? This is Coach Evan, and I want to thank you for tuning into the Breakthrough Performance Podcast. On today's episode, I would like to go over a question that I am getting a ton on the training floor, so I wanted to talk about it. Maybe you guys could get something out of it, or you can listen to me repeat things I've already said to you on the training floor, and that's okay too. Maybe a little refresher. All right, so what is the question of the day? The question is it better for me to get the exact number of reps that you tell me to get, or is it better for me to push myself and maybe not get as many reps, right? Let's say you got a set of 12 on bench press. You're usually using 90 pounds. You can get 90 pounds for 12. You don't know if you can get 100 pounds for 12, right? Do we go up to 100 and maybe risk not getting the 12, or do we just play super safe and stick with that 90 pounds? So just like everything else with fitness, it absolutely depends on who you are, what day of the week it is, all that stuff, how you slept, blah, 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 blah. Typical answer talking about gym stuff is going to be, it depends. But let's talk about why it depends, okay? So first off, to give a more general answer, right? We'll go to general answer and then we'll get a little more specific with it and how you can make that determination yourself. The general answer is going to be, it is probably better for you to push overreach a little bit, but let's stay within 2 reps of what's prescribed, right? We're still in that range, right? If you go to 100 pounds and let's say you want to get 12, you only get 10, right? We're still within 2, so I wouldn't even consider that a big fail or anything. If anything, you should be proud of yourself for pushing it a little bit more, okay? But Now that I've given you a little more general of an answer, that's the short answer. Let's go for the long answer because this is a podcast, so I could do that. First up, I would like to define what we mean by intensity, because this is all a conversation around, is it better to push the intensity or not? Like, that's really what we're talking about here. There's nothing magical about the rep numbers, right? If I say to do a set of 10, there's nothing magical about getting a set of 10. Are you going to get different training qualities than a set of 1 or a set of 3 or a set of 5 or even 7? Yes, you are, but it's always going to be along a spectrum, right? Whereas with a set of 1, what are we training there? We're mostly training for muscular output, right? Neurological adaptations. That's what getting stronger is at the end of the day. It's mostly a neurological adaptation, right? Our brain is getting better at sending signals to the muscles. Our muscles are getting better at accepting those signals and pushing as hard as possible. Whereas when we're on the other end of the spectrum, we are actually inducing more fatigue overall on the actual muscular tissue, right? So you might think, well, isn't maxing out going to be extremely, extremely fatiguing? And yes, it is, but in a slightly different way, right? It's extremely fatiguing on the nervous system, but it's going to be less fatiguing on the actual musculature, right? So when you are going for those higher reps, again, not a hard rule, and this isn't the most scientific answer, when you're going for a little bit higher of reps, you're able to have more time under tension, right? You're able to have the muscles exhibit actually, have them underneath load more, which is generally going to lead to better hypertrophy adaptations, which is the word that we use to describe muscles growing. So let's talk a little bit about intensity, okay? When we say intensity, we're just talking about how close you're getting to the absolute limit, right? A lot of the times I'll use the scale of RPE or RIR. Those are pretty similar things. For you guys, you can kind of think of them as the same. There are differences. They're very, very slight, but you can just think of them as opposites, right? So RPE is a scale of 1 to 10 of your rate of perceived exertion. That's what RPE stands for. 1 is going to be, well, this was the easiest thing in the world. I might as well go for a walk right now, right? And if your set of deadlift is that difficult, well, then go up, right? Go up no matter what. Once we get to like a 5 or a 6, like a 6 would be, okay, I could do 4 more, right? 7 would be, okay, I could do 3 more. 8 would be, I could do 2 more. 9, I would be able to do 1 more. And 10 is like if you add a single feather, if you put a penny on top of that bar, I will not be able to lift it anymore. Okay, so that is our RPE scale. So RIR, reps in reserve, exact opposite thing there, right? It is how many reps do I have left in the tank? So a 10 would be I have 10 reps left in the tank. It's very easy. RIR of 0 would mean pretty much the same as RPE of 10. So I can't do a single even, I can't even do half a rep right now, okay? So that might have been a little bit wordy of a definition there, of a description. So again, RPE is going to be a scale of 1 to 10 on how much effort you put in. Now that's hard to actually quantify, so we'll just say, how many more reps could you do? All right, subtract that from 10. I could do one more rep, that's an RPE of 9. That's very difficult, very, very difficult, right? RIR, reps in reserve, opposite thing there. How many reps are left in the tank? How many reps are in reserve, right? So while we understand that now, which I think is really, really important, because when we talk about how hard you're going or anything like that, I can say very. I could say not. I could say moderately. But what do those words mean? Let's get a little more specific with the language here. So understanding RPE and RIR is going to be a great tool for you, right? So if you're ever unsure of how heavy to go, and you don't know exactly what number to hit for the day, just ask me. I'll help you out, right? Or Coach Eric. We'll love to help you out there, okay? Why do I start this off with that? Now, the question was, is it better for me to go really heavy and push myself? Or is it better to stay within that exact rep range? Now, again, there's nothing magical about the rep number, but I do want you to stay within that range because it is a spectrum and I want you to stay close to whatever it is, right? If I write a 1 on the program or if I write a 3, all it is I want you to go heavy and keep the reps low, right? If it's a 12, it's like, okay, I want you to go a little lighter on the weights and I want you to get more reps in, right? Because again, we're training different things there, as I spoke about ad nauseum earlier. So we're looking for, I would say as a general rule of thumb, your compound lifts, we want to be at an RPE of 8 most of the time. Again, this is super, super general, but if you're training with me, I would say generally this is where we're going to be. So where does it get a little more complicated than that? Well, it gets more complicated because the coaches are based off of every single word you tell us, what time you show up to the gym, how you walk in, whether or not you seem excited. All of those are going to affect how good of a day it is to actually push, okay? If you're dealing with some pain, you got some stuff flaring up, the coaches might then say, okay, well, I know this person wants to push today, but they've been telling me they got some shoulder stuff going on, and while I don't think bench press is a bad exercise for their shoulder, for their specific pain case, I do think that pushing the intensity really hard is going to produce a little more stiffness in the area, right? So in that case, I might cap you at an RPE of 6. Now, how does that play into the question of earlier? Well, RPE of 6, you're definitely staying on that rep count, right? You are 100% adhering to a set of 12 if it's on there. Now, likewise, if you have a set of 3 on the program and you're talking about shoulder pain, I'm probably going to tell you to do a little bit more. Okay, so what I want you guys to understand in this conversation is how we actually decide the intensity level to go each day, because sometimes it can be that I want you to push harder. Sometimes it can be that I want you to maybe rein it in a little bit. Okay, so again, like if 12's on the program, I want you to get 12, absolutely. But if you're feeling good and you want to push, we absolutely want you to test your limits, because if you're not sure if you could do 12, hey, let's find out, right? Let's find out. But as long as you can stay within that, I would say range of 2, you're probably going to be in a pretty good spot. Now, I don't want you to say, okay, 12's on the program, can I do a set of 1? Probably not. Probably not, but maybe. Might as well ask. Because, again, we want you to stay within a specific RPE range. Now, I'll walk you through a couple of scenarios for that. For me, this is how I train, right? Especially these days, I'm feeling great in the gym. I'm pushing it really hard. I leave workouts, and I'm not too sore afterwards, but that's just because I've been training a while, and I'm relatively well adapted to that. I'm sleeping all right. I'm eating pretty solidly. So for me, if I push every single set to an RP of 10, I'm going to be okay. I'm actually just going to get stronger. Now, there's been times in my life where I'm experiencing more pain, or I'm recovering worsely, or maybe I'm just not even as motivated to go to the gym. You're still getting stuff out of the lower RPE or RIR work, right? So it's still really important to get that in, but we're using these as tools to regulate our intensity based off of how we feel, okay? Now, I hope this is helpful because I'm kind of going off on a big tangent here, and I hope you guys can see how this is related to the original question. At the end of the day, whether or not it's super important to stick to the rep range is going to be based off of how you feel. Again, if you feel great, you've been training for, let's say, a month and you have had no pain, you can probably push it pretty hard, right? Most people can probably push a little harder than they think. Now, there's the opposite end. A lot of people fall into one of two categories where either you're a person who the coach needs to hold you back in the gym, or you're the kind of person who needs a little push, right? So it's important to kind of know which one you are as well, because your brain telling you, I need to max out every single day, you might not always want to listen to it. You want to listen to it sometimes, though, for sure. Now, I also want to talk a little bit about form, right? How important form is. If you're listening to this, like, you know, obviously that it's extremely important, but it's something I want us to keep in mind as we talk about really, really pushing hard as well, because we have really three kinds of failure in a set. The first type of failure I would just consider as you just didn't want to do it anymore, which you get like half credit for going to failure on. Just like you could have pushed, but you didn't want to, which, hey, train however you want. Asterisk there, because I'm still going to tell you how to train. 2 is going to be the actual like muscular failure that we think of, right? That RP of 10, that I can't do another rep. All right, I got to rack it or I'm going to die. And then there's a third, which is going to be technical failure, right? So if I'm doing a set of barbell back squats and I'm really, really, really focused on a specific positioning, right? Let's say having a neutral torso, right? Where I'm not too rounded forward, my back's in a good position. If that's something I'm working on and I have to hit a set of 12 and I have a good amount of weight on the bar, I might get to a set of 10, still be able to push for 2 more reps, but I might lose that positioning, okay? So if it's extremely normal, like everyone in the world has this happen, where they approach technical failure at some point, and we have to understand there are certain exercises where it's kind of okay to push past technical failure a little bit, and there are ones where we really, really, really don't want to be doing that. Just to fire off a couple of examples here, bicep curl. You can absolutely push that way past technical failure, right? They call them cheat reps. You can get a couple cheat reps on a bicep curl. That's totally okay. It's probably not going to hurt you. It's going to be a little more fatiguing, sure. If you have any real bad shoulder pain, are you risking increasing that a tiny bit? Yeah, kinda. Not too much, right? So our single joint isolation exercises are ones that we can kind of push really, really hard with minimal drawbacks. Now, I used the example of a squat before because that's absolutely one of them where we don't really want to be pushing past technical failure. Even if you do feel great, the risk is just higher with we refer to it as a compound movement, right? There's multiple joints moving there. You got your ankle, knee, hip, all of your back is moving there. So we refer to that as compound because there's multiple different joints going on, right? Bench press would be another example of that, but it's a little safer on the bench press. And then like our deadlift, right? So think about your really heavy kind of barbell-based movements, okay? So anything where there is more than one joint involved in the exercise, anything that you kind of feel like this is working my whole body, that is something where technical failure is something we want to keep in mind a little bit more, okay? So bring it back to the original question. Is it better to push past, whatever my limit is for the day? Or is it better to stay with a certain amount of reps? I would say keep a couple things in mind. where are you at in your training history, right? Are you in a spot where it's a good idea, like, to handle a little more fatigue? Can you, right? Are you leaving the gym every day feeling, oh my God, I'm dead. I'm so sore. I don't even know if I can make it to the gym tomorrow. Because in that case, you probably don't even need to continue making progress. But if you want to, ask the coach. We'll give you a second opinion on that. 2, is this a safe exercise to kind of push past technical failure on, right? So your bicep curls, you can go as crazy as you want on a bicep curl, like, within reason a little bit. But again, like, I just keep using that as an example because I want us to understand why it's safer to do that on a single joint isolation exercise than it is on compound movement, right? Because the compound movements kind of use the whole body, so there's a lot more to go wrong there. There's a lot more technical demand and therefore more risk with pushing past technical failure, okay? So on something like a squat, it's probably not a good idea to push too heavy. You can every once in a while, but if you want to come into the gym and you want to max out your squat every day, I would encourage you to reconsider or try it and then get hurt and then learn from it, which is unfortunately also an option that I have learned many, many times in my life. Same with the deadlift, right? Same with the bench press, but less, because again, less joints moving there. It's a little safer of an exercise. Not that any exercise is inherently dangerous, but there is a small amount of risk with any kind of physical movement or physical activity. There's risk walking outside, right? People trip and fall all the time. So not to say any exercise is inherently dangerous, but you kind of get the idea, right? Now, I just want us to understand again that the body doesn't care about the number of reps you did. It cares about the challenge that it's receiving, okay? I'm going to say that again because I think it's important. Your body doesn't care about the number of reps you did. It cares about how much challenge you are putting on it. Now, if you've been training a while and you're very well adapted to the training, you're going to have to increase the challenge over time, right? It actually gets harder for us to get stronger. It gets harder for us to put on more muscle. It gets harder for us to develop better cardio as we get more and more advanced in the gym. So just kind of keep that in mind there, because when you're newer, you actually don't need as much of a challenge, right? We have people come in all the time and they kind of seem like, well, that wasn't much at all. And then the next day they're texting us like, oh my God, I'm dead. I can't believe it. And that's because if your body is not terribly well adapted to the training, it's going to be extremely challenging relative to what you are used to, which might not be too much at first. And honestly, that's a good thing. That's kind of a good thing. Like, take that while you can, okay? So just to bring it back around to what I was talking about in the beginning, RPE and RIR are extremely valuable tools for us to understand. It is a coaching language kind of thing that we use to regulate intensity. RPE is a scale of 1 to 10 on how difficult a set was, whereas RIR is the number of reps you have left in the tank. And we are going to give you a different intensity prescription for each day, right? Now, the next thing I spoke about, I believe, was the actual rep count. Now, if you guys can stay within 2 reps of the, target number, I'm cool with it, right? That doesn't mean if it says 12, you do 10 on every set. But maybe that means you do a set of 12, you bump up the weight, you try for a set of 12, you get it, you bump up the weight. Oh, well, you only get 10. At least you know now and you pushed yourself, right? We also have to keep in mind that there are better days to push and worse days to push, right? You slept poorly, you ate poorly, you're dehydrated, you got a back thing going on. Probably a good idea to just kind of stay the course and not give your body too much of a challenge, because you might still feel that in other areas, because the body kind of works systemically, right? It is one body. So if you go RPE 10, now that you guys know what that one means, if you guys go RPE 10 on a bench press, and then the next day you're like, oh, my back hurts. Well, it's not that you hurt your back bench pressing. It's that your nervous system is stressed out. So anything that hurts a tiny bit might pop up a little bit. Okay, so if we're holding you back on something, that might be kind of what's going through the coach's head there. All right, just want you guys to understand that. It's important for us to keep in mind the technical versus muscular failure, right? And when or when not, it's a good idea to push past that. I believe I went over single joint isolation exercises tend to be safer to push past technical failure on, whereas our multi-joint exercises, our compound movements, our heavy barbell movements like a back squat or a deadlift, those tend to be ones with a little bit more of a risk, right? Now, not that it's inherently dangerous, but there is just a little more risk, okay? And if you're not sure, always just ask the coaches. And if me rambling on in this podcast didn't help you out too much, well, just call me or something. I don't know. We'll talk about it. Would love to help you out. All right? With that being said, we are starting our Thursday morning classes next week, okay? Not tomorrow. Today is Wednesday, April 30th. Not tomorrow, but the next week, where we also don't have Friday morning next week because Eric and I are going to learn some stuff about how gyms work. We're going to go learn and bring you guys back some good stuff to hopefully make the gym better. All right? That is all I got for you guys. Keep the questions coming. It is really, really helpful for me to know because I am doing this podcast so I can help you guys out with your questions. I don't have any questions for myself on training. I got questions from you guys to help you out. All right? So, yeah, thank you so much for tuning in, guys. Coach Evan out. See you soon.